Hello everyone. Today's lecture topic is going to be on radiation biology. These are your limbs. We all know that ionizing radiation are harmful and produce biological changes in living organisms. Radiation biology is the study of the effects of this ionizing radiation on living tissue, and it is also an essential field to study the effects of uh, X-rays and its harmful effects over the living tissue. And the harmful effects of X-rays were discovered later than that of X-ray itself, soon after the discovery of X-rays. Uh, and uh, and ironically, the first person probably to have had the ill effects of X radiation, direct X radiation, would have been the um, uh, person who discovered it itself, William Conrad Röntgen. Apparently, he had died of cancer. There is a saying that person who wields the sword shall fall prey to it. Initially, X-rays after its discovery, more than that of medical use, it was used for mostly amusement. Um, and the X-ray apparatus was put into a box and it was carried over and it was used as an entertainment show to show people's bones without knowing the harmful effects of X-rays. But later on, soon after, when people who have been constantly exposed to X-rays started developing adverse effects and symptoms, extensive studies were made and ill effects of radiations were listed out. Uh, it's going to be a little bit of a dry topic, but there are certain phenomena that we have to familiarize ourselves with, such as the free radical formation and the various theories of radiation injury. What is the direct effect, indirect effect, the stochastic and non-stochastic effects, what is a dose response curve, and the sequence of radiation injuries. And as per our learning outcome, we need to know a little about the ill effects of radiation that concerns with mostly with dentistry, which we'll be predominantly seeing. Two common things we are going to look into. One will be radiation caries, and another one will be osteoradionecrosis. We'll start with the basics and we'll proceed further. We all know what ionization is. X-rays are a form of ionizing radiation where when an X-ray strikes a patient's tissue, it results in ionization. It is produced through a photoelectric effect or a Crompton scatter, which we saw in radiation physics, and results in positive atom and a dislodged negative electron. The ejected electron is set into motion and interacts with the atom, and which gets absorbed within the tissues. So when a low energy photon, which gets through and which does not help us form the image, or which does not pass through the tissue and exit the patient, is absorbed into the tissue, and this undergoes this causes certain amount of chemical changes within the cell that results in biological damage. So ionization may have a little effect on cells if the chemical changes do not alter the does not alter something major, like if it does not cause any molecular level of changes, but at the same time it can also have a profound effect if uh, uh, you know the doses are constantly given to a patient. And this is exactly what we have taken advantage of to and use it, and we use it as radiation therapy in cancer treatment. So um we all know in radiation physics we studied about the various spectrum, various um, part of the electromagnetic spectrum, UV rays, X-rays, infrared, microwaves. So one among them is X-rays and the absorption of X-rays at various levels. So most of it we is comes from the cosmos, the radon, and medical is 14%, and it is debatable for a normal person average. They say they get, even if you get one X-ray per year, it doesn't actually account to 14%, and internal and gamma radiation are further. So moving on to radiation chemistry, here we need to study the various theories of you know um, radiation biology. So these are the topics that we'll be looking into: the direct effect, the radiolysis of water, the indirect effects, and the changes in the DNA. And to start off with, let me start with free radical production. The X-ray causes cell damage primarily through the formation of free radicals. So this free radical formation occurs when an X-ray photon um, ionizes water. So we all know that our body is 70% of water. You would have very commonly heard this. Our body is made up of 70% of water. Does not mean that water is simply flowing through our body or anything. That is the constituent of every cell in our body. The majority of that cell is constituted of a liquid component, which is basically water. So what how free radical is formed is when X-ray interacts with this water molecule within the cell, hydrolysis occurs, and thus creation of free radicals. So we all know that when an X-ray photon ionizes water, the primary which is the primary component of the living cell, and there is formation of there is interaction within the hydrogen and the oxygen atom. We all know the component of it, H2O, and there is interaction of this thing, and production of hydroxyl free radicals. These free radicals here usually basically are um, you know um, is basically uncharged, which has a neutral charge, and the molecule exists within a single and unpaired electron in its outermost cell. So this what happens is when this interaction of these atoms happen, the molecule becomes unstable, and to again attain stability, there is borrowing of electrons that happens, and during this stage there is again production of X-rays. So this in terms when borrowed, this component of H2O is rearranged into H2O2, which is hydrogen peroxide, which over a period of time when it gets accumulated is capable of producing very widespread changes to the cell, or complete cell damage, thus causing necrosis. So this is the theory of free radical formation. Now we'll move on to the other theories of radiation injury, such as the direct and the indirect effect. Uh, so this is the formula that I was speaking about. HOH is generally given to denote H2O. So two atoms of hydrogen and one atom of oxygen, and when it undergoes radiolysis, thus formation of H2O2, which is hydrogen peroxide. So changes in biological molecules, that is the formation of these the hydrogen peroxide components affects the cell structure in within the nuclei and the proteins present in it. So what are the radiation effects? So here, for us to understand that, we need to understand the direct and indirect theory. So the direct theory of radiation injury suggests that the cell damage results when ionization radiation directly hits the critical areas or the targets within the cell. Like for example, if the X-ray is directly striking the DNA of the cell. So over a period of time, when there is constant damage to the DNA, so our entire structure, so DNA is the the building blocks, so entire structure gets changes. So when there is damage, there is alteration within repair. So one among such damage is what leads to cancer. Like for example, there are let us say within our DNA there is something called as tumor necrosis factor, and there is another factor which controls the cell growth. So when this part of the DNA gets damaged, there is uncontrolled cell growth which leads to cancer. So this is just one such example. So direct DNA damage of a cell, which is very critical, and it causes causing injury to the irradiated person. And direct injury from exposure to ionizing radiation occur infrequently. It is not very commonly seen. Most X-ray photons pass through the cell and cause little or no damage. So direct effect is not very commonly seen. It is not very significant. Whereas moving on to the indirect theory. So in indirect theory, there is a radiation injury suggests that the X-ray photon are absorbed within the cell, and it causes a formation of toxins which in turn damage the cell. So we saw that in direct effect, the X-rays directly hit the DNA and causes cell damage, whereas here in indirect effect, the ionizing radiation leads to some form of chemical change which leads to cell damage or cell death. So it is not a direct effect. That is the difference, primary difference between direct effect and indirect effect of radiation injury. So for example, when an X-ray photon is absorbed by water within a cell, there is free radical formation. So the concept of free radical formation, which I explained to you before, falls under the indirect theory, and this in terms leads to production of hydrogen peroxide, which causes cellular dysfunction and biologic damage. And indirect effect results because of free radicals combine and form toxins, not because of a direct hit by X-ray photons. Indirect injuries from exposure to ionizing radiation occur frequently because of high water content of cells, and these the chances of free radical formation and indirect injury are greater because the cell constitutes of 70 to 80% of water, like I mentioned before. So the chances of getting indirect effect from radiation is more than that of uh, direct radiation. And to understand that, we need to understand a concept of dose response curve, in which they say like with radiation exposure, dose response curve can be used to correlate the response and the damage of tissues and the dose or the amount of radiation received. So what is the effect of this radiation on cells, and what are the cells? So there are different, our bodies are made up of different types of cells, and which are that of are more sensitive to radiation, and which of that are less sensitive to radiation. So here the terminologies that we have to understand here are the vegetative intermitotic cells, the differentiating intermitotic cells, the multipotential connective tissue cells, reverting post-mitotic cells, and fixed mitotic cells. So the effects that we have to understand here is the short-term effects, where there is relative radiosensitivity of various organs, long-term effects, and then there is modifying factors such as dose rate, let. So the cell, which is or the basic structural unit of the living organism, is composed of a central nucleus and surrounding cytoplasm. So the ionizing radiation may affect the nucleus, the cytoplasm, or the entire cell. So the cell nucleus is more sensitive to radiation than that of the cytoplasm. So damage to the nucleus affects the chromosomes containing DNA and results in kind of interfering with the amount of cell division that happens. That is the mitotic activity which happens within the cell, which in turn might lead to abnormal function of the cell or cell death. Uh, so what we have to understand here is that not all the cells respond to radiation in the same way, and a cell that is sensitive to radiation is termed radiosensitive, and the one that is resistant is called radioresistant. So the response of the cell to radiation exposure is determined by the mitotic activity, cell differentiation, and cell metabolism. So mitotic activity is where the cells that divide frequently or undergo many divisions over time are more sensitive to radiation, and cell differentiation, cells that are immature and that are not very highly specialized are more sensitive to radiation. And then there is cell metabolism, where cells have higher metabolism. Cells that have higher metabolism are more sensitive to radiation. So cells that are radiosensitive include blood cells, immature reproductive cells, and young bone cells, that is the osteoblasts. And the cell that are most sensitive to radiation is the small lymphocyte. Resistant cells include bone, and muscle and nerves, cells in the nerves. So another concept that we have to understand here when we talk about radiation effects on the cells is the short-term and long-term effects. So radiation effects can be classified into two categories: short-term and long-term. So following the latent period, the effects that are seen within minutes, days, or weeks are termed as short-term effects. That happens within first a few days of radiation exposure are termed as short-term effects. Short-term effects are associated with large amounts of radiation absorbed in a short time. That is, example can be given an exposure to an atom bomb, an acute radiation syndrome, which is usually a result of short-term effects, which includes uh, uh, you know which has effects starting from as basic as nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, hair loss, and hemorrhage, blood loss. And short-term effects are generally not applicable to dental or oral radiology because we do not use that term of large doses of radiation. Whereas effects that appear after years and decades and generations are termed as long-term effects. So long-term effects are associated with small amount of radiation which are absorbed repeatedly over a long period. So this repeated low levels of radiation exposure are linked to the uh, you know linked to giving rise of cancer, causing developmental or developmental anomalies or congenital anomalies and genetic defects. Um, so these genetic effects are not generally seen in the irradiated person, but are passed down to the future generations. So radiation injuries that produce these changes in genetic cells do not affect the health of the individual who is exposed to the radiation, but in turn, the radiation induced mutation generally affects the offspring. This is what this genetic effect uh, you know translates to, and it is something that cannot be reversed or repaired very easily. This uh, type of effect tends to remain for a long term, and it gets passed on. Whereas there is another type of effect which is somatic effect, where it is seen in a person who has been irradiated. Radiation injuries that produce changes in somatic cells produce poor health in the person who is exposed to ionizing radiation. And the major effects of radiation exposure include um, the person getting cancer, leukemia, and cataracts in the eye. And these changes, is the somatic effect, or the changes that happens at the somatic level of the cell, is usually not passed on to the future generation. We have to keep that in mind when we understand the effects of radiation. So I used a word prior, the latent period. So the radiation effect exhibit a latent period. So like for example, when I talked about long-term effects, I told you there is a short, a small dose of radiation, which is given over a long period. So in these type of conditions, you might not see the effect of radiation immediately. Just like how we have a latent image while we take an X-ray, similarly, after the person is exposed to radiation, he remains normal. He carries on with his regular activities. He doesn't feel that he is sick or anything. And this particular phase, until he starts developing this symptom, is called a latent period. And the latent period may last from a few minutes to decades, and sometimes depending on the effect on the person, whether it is somatic or genetic effect, it might vary. So here we might also have to understand the uh, you know the amount of DNA damage that occurs. So I already told you about the effect on mitotic activity, cell differentiation, and cell metabolism. So there are particular stages when cell undergoes mitosis or cell differentiation, that it is more prone to incur damage due to radiation than that of the other phases. So what kind of changes that can happen? We talked about DNA damage. So we know that there are chromosomes within the cell, and the ionizing radiation can actually break the chromosomes, or it can make it break and rejoin in a different way. So the broken pieces might either recover, correctly rejoin, or a piece might get lost, or there is rearrangement of the broken ends forming an abnormal formation, that is like yield rings or dicentrics, etc. And rearrangements generally are not visible, but the genetic material is usually as damaged as a result of mutation. So this is one such example where you can see the alleles of the chromosome are being broken away, and at the end of it, you can see that a ring formation, an abnormal formation. Normal would be, how is that the alleles either heal or recover by itself, or it goes for cell death. But instead of this particular cell dying and the chromosome going away with it, what happens is it tends to mutate and to live on further and forms its own mutation. These broken pieces forms into one fragment, and the broken allele forms a ring fragment, thus causing changes in the structure of the DNA. So how does this gene mutation occur as a single response, and how the whole body responds to this? So to this, we have to understand the sequence here, the sequence of the radiation injury, how it occurs. So initially, like we talked about during ionization, there is a chemical reaction that occurs which leads to free radical formation, that that follows the absorption of radiation, which at the molecular level. However, there is varying amounts during varying amounts of time are required for this change, for this particular um, ionization radiation to have an effect over the body, because every day we tend to cell different cells have different lifespan. So there are certain cells that die every day and regenerate every day. There are cells that die and regenerate every 3 days. There are cells that die and regenerate every week, every month. So it differs from different various cells. So for an let us say, for example, the radiation affects a cell in the oral mucosa, which generally the epithelial cells, which generally have a lifespan of, let us say, roughly 3 to 1 week of lifespan. So even if the changes occur, the cell death occurs within 7 days. It is washed away, and new cell, it is replaced by a new cell. So for this effect to become permanent by radiation, it has to occur over a period of time, right? So it has to constantly keep hammering. So this, at this point of time, will not be able to see any effect related to the radiation here, which like we discussed before, is called the latent period. So a latent period can be defined as the time that elapses between exposure to the ionization radiation and the appearance of observable clinical signs. So the latent period can either be short or long, depending on the total dose of radiation received and the amount of time and the rate and it took to receive the dose. So the more the radiation received and the faster the dose rate, the shorter is the latent period, is what is to be understood from this. So after the latent period, a period of injury occurs. So a variety of cellular changes might result, including cell death, changes in cell function, breaking or clumping of chromosomes, which we discussed earlier, formation of giant cells, cessation of mitotic activity and abnormal mitotic activity. So which we briefly saw before in the previous slides. And the last event in this sequence of radiation injury is the recovery period. So not all the cellular radiation injuries are permanent. With each radiation exposure, the cellular damage is followed by a repair. So depending on the number of various factors, cells can repair the damage that are caused by X-rays. So most of these damages are caused by low-level radiation and is repaired within the cells of the body. And the effects of radiation exposures are usually additive, or what we can call a cumulative effect. So it is due to the repeated radiation exposure that can lead to health problems, for example, like cancer, cataract formation, or birth defects, which we discussed a little earlier. So um, so the determining factors for radiation injury will be you know the um, factors that influence the radiation injury, the factors that are factors that are used to determine the degree of radiation injury, or like the total dose and the dose rate. So total dose refers to the quantity of radiation received by the individual, or the total amount of radiation energy that is absorbed. More damage occurs when the tissue absorbs large quantities of radiation. And similarly, dose rate, rate at which the exposure to radiation occurs and absorption takes place. More radiation damage takes place with high dose rates, because a rapid delivery of radiation dose does not allow time for the cellular damage to be, generally it does not allow the repair to happen. So it keeps constantly, constantly damaging the cell repeatedly over and over and over again. So and the amount of time irradiated also has to be taken into consideration. And other factors include cell sensitivity, whether the cell is radio sensitive or radio resistant, and age of the person, because children are more susceptible to radiation damage than that of the adults, because the you know because the children are in growth phase and there is constant regeneration of cells that keeps happening. So the cell is always under some cycle, and the opportunity for the cell to radiation damage is more prominent in that of younger individuals, older adults. So how to handle this? First is to control contamination, second is to minimize exposure, and third is to reduce the amount of dose. To go on with it, we already saw the conventional and the SI unit, the standard international units for exposure, absorbed dose, dose equivalent, and radioactivity in the radiation physics class. We'll just go through it fastly again. So for exposure, it is conventional unit is Röntgen, and the SI unit is coulombs per kilogram, and the absorbed dose is rad, and then SI unit is gray, and the equivalent dose equivalent or equivalent dose, both are same. The conventional unit is RIM, and the SI unit is sievert. Sievert is the unit you will come across very frequently when you study about effects of radiation. And radioactivity is generally the conventional measured in terms of Curie, and the SI unit is becquerel. So how to protect ourselves? With film batches, and use of dosimeters, uh, uh, by constantly monitoring. And protection comes in the form of lead apron as much as possible. We cover ourselves, maintain a distance. We'll be seeing radiation protection and radiation hazards in the next class, but this is just to know generally. Apart from protective equipment, constant monitoring of the person who has the potential to be exposed to radiation constantly plays a very key role in terms of identifying and preventing effects of X-rays in a person. That is achieved by wearing film batches and pocket dosimeters. So this one we already discussed, the short-term effects and long-term effects. There is one more phenomenon that I want to discuss about, which is the stochastic and non-stochastic effects. So, so the biological effects from radiation can be classified as stochastic and non-stochastic. Stochastic effects occur as a direct function of dose. The probability of occurrence increases with increase in the absorbed dose. However, the severity of the effects does not depend on the magnitude of the absorbed dose. As in the case of non-threshold radiation effects, the stochastic effects do not have dosage threshold. For example, example of stochastic effects are cancer, that is tumor induction, and genetic mutations that occur in cells due to direct effect of the ionizing radiation. Whereas non-stochastic effects are kind of more of a somatic effect that have a threshold and that increase in severity with increased absorbed dose. That is repetition of ionizing radiation which is absorbed by the body. And the examples of non-stochastic effects include erythema, loss of hair, cataract formation, decreased fertility, especially in men. And compared to that of stochastic, Non-stochastic efforts require larger radiation doses to cause very serious impairment in a person's health. So this is a picture that explains radiation therapy. Keeping in mind that what I talked to you about long-term effects, which we in turn use to our benefit to create, which we use to treat radiation therapy in patients. We take advantage of these long-term effects, and we shrink the tumor or carcinoma using radiation. So keeping this in mind, the measurements that are used in dental radiography, that we have to understand that Gray and Sievert are equal, and Röntgen, Rad and RIM are considered equal approximately. So smaller amounts of these radiation units are typically used in dentistry because small quantity of radiation is used in radiation and dental procedures. Um, and the higher range of radiations are generally used in radiation therapy. So radiation therapy, we have various modalities. We'll be we'll be studying a little much more in detail about that when we study about oral cancer, where we'll see the various modalities, how we deliver radiation into the patient, and how we take advantage of the long-term effects of radiation to actually treat patient with malignant or benign tumor. So in radiation therapy, what we have to understand is the various concepts, starting with brachytherapy. So the picture you see in the slide as of now is these pins are generally charged pins with which emits radiation, which will be surgically placed within the patient's carcinoma or tumor. So instead of throwing radiation from outside, like in the pictures we saw prior, which is how conventionally we deliver radiation. So conventionally how we deliver radiation is that there will be an external machine which will produce x-rays and which will be sent thrown into the patient, whereas here in brachytherapy these charged pins or rods are inserted within the tumor or carcinoma, which constantly keeps emitting over a period of time radiation from within, thus necrotizing and shrinking the uh, um, lesion from within. Then again another procedure is performed and the pin is removed. Brachytherapy is considered one of the best modalities to you know to treat contained malignancies. But since it poses a huge health hazard to the operator who actually performs this procedure, it is now majorly avoided. And now with the advantage of having IMRT, intensity modulated radiation therapy, and image guided radiation therapy, IGRT, and the progression of linear reactors, we now usage of brachytherapy is you know the frequency is reduced. The picture you see on the right is a linear reactor. This is just a picture where uh, we were trained in Chennai Radiation Therapy Center in Chennai. We had the fortune of attending various sessions here where we learned uh, cancer therapy via radiation in both these centers. Both these centers were equipped with linear reactors, as you see in these pictures. There was one prior picture where you saw, a fiber-like mask over a patient's face. So a patient is stabilized like that on the, stretcher there, and this machine tends to revolve around the patient and delivers radiation directly. This is external, so externally delivers radiation to the patient. And when we go for higher uh, you know higher versions of it, like IMRT, IGRT, the radiation is targeted exactly over the lesion. And so what are the radiation effects on the oral cavity? In oral tissues, we have to understand oral mucous membrane. It might cause a certain amount of inflammation with erythema, and there is oral mucositis, radiation-induced mucositis, which comes in 4 stages, which we will discuss further. And taste buds, radiation has an effect of uh, you know altering taste sensation in a person by destruction of taste buds, decreasing salivary activity, and due to all these cumulative effects, and plus its direct effect on the tooth surface, can lead to radiation induced caries. More than mm, this terminology has gone back and forth between OMR specialists and cancer treatment specialists and endodontists, where there are two different level of terminologies, and not to be confused with, both generally indicate the same, but getting the terminology right is important for both the perspectives. So it is either radiation caries or radiation induced caries, and the effects of it on the mandible, especially in the mandibular canal, uh, uh, and the muscles, um, um, the muscles of mastication and the facial muscles. So I told you about the effect of radiation over the mucosal surface, and I told you there are 4 stages, clinical stages, and at cellular level there are 5 phases. Where starting with stage 1, where there is DNA damage, and following by signaling, where there is increased level of detoxifying enzymes to protect against reactive oxygen species, and which further then progresses to amplification, where there is decreased level of pro-inflammatory cytokines and a decreased apoptosis, and finally phase which progresses to phase 4, because of which there is rupture or discontinuation of the mucosal membrane, which leads to ulceration and effectively erythema, which also leads to inflammation, which also leads to pain. And finally phase 5, which forms healing. And this phase 5 portion becomes tricky when this does not happen constantly, and this rupture tends to become long term. Then this is again considered malignancy. So picture explaining radiation induced mucositis, ulceration formed, and this is explaining radiation induced caries. You can see that radiation induced caries occurs mostly along the it either involves the entire tooth, or it occurs along the cement enamel junction of the tooth region. So there are different types of radiation caries, where you have type 1 are the lesions that affects the cervical aspect of the tooth, that extends along the cement enamel junction, and there is type 2, which presents with demineralized and worn out occlusal surfaces. And then there is type 3 lesions, which are present as color changes in the dentin, the crown, which results in dark brown, black along with occlusal wear and tear. Moving on to the deterministic effects of the whole body radiation. It can lead to something called as ARS, which translates to acute radiation syndrome. So we talked about, I used the same terminology ARS when I talked about radiation that is given in uh, long term effects. When you give very short uh, dose of radiation for a longer duration. So in this we have acute radiation syndrome, where you have a prodromal period, and then you have a lateral latent period, and then you have hematopoietic syndrome, and then you have gastrointestinal syndrome, and cardiovascular and central nervous syndrome. So acute radiation syndrome is a culmination of all of this. So the bone marrow syndrome, or the hematopoietic syndrome, the gastrointestinal syndrome, and the cardiovascular or central nervous syndrome are called the three classics of uh, 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 acute radiation syndromes. So talking about bone marrow syndromes, it is which is again a hematopoietic syndrome. It's a full syndrome will occur when the dose is between zero point 0.7 to 10 gray, and though mild symptoms might occur when between zero point 0.3 to 3 gray to 30 3 gray, and the survival rate of patients with this syndrome decreases with increasing dose, and the primary cause of death in this case is destruction of the bone marrow, resulting in infection and hemorrhage. Whereas in gastrointestinal syndrome, it usually occurs at a greater dose, again at 10 gray, and survival is extremely unlikely with this syndrome due to destructive and irreparable changes to GI tract and bone marrow, which usually causes infection, dehydration, and electrolyte imbalance, and death usually occurs within 2 weeks when a person is diagnosed with gastrointestinal syndrome. And the cardiovascular syndrome, death occurs within 3 days, and death likely due to collapse of the circulatory system, or the loss of, or the failure of circulatory system within the cranial vault, which results in increased fluid content caused by edema, which leads to vasculitis and meningitis. So there are four stages to this acute respiratory syndrome, like we discussed before. The prodromal stage, the classic symptoms for this stage are nausea, vomiting, anorexia, diarrhea, which can occur like starting immediately after exposure, following following 2 days, and the symptoms might last up to several days. And then there is a latent stage. In this stage, the patient generally looks and feels healthy, and this might the latent period can be from a few hours to few days or several days even. Then comes the illness stage, where in this stage the symptoms deepens to and transforms, and one of the syndromes are manifested, and lasts, and it can last from hours to several months. Finally, the patient either recovers, or the patient there is fatality of the patient due to the condition becoming untreatable. So we already discussed the stochastic and non-stochastic effects of patient, and moving on to, so what is mucositis? Mucositis is the inflammation of the mucosal surface throughout the body. It typically involves redness and ulcerative sources, soft tissue of the mucosa, and oral mucositis manifests as erythema, inflammation, ulceration, and hemorrhage of the mouth and the throat. So it is characterized by the damage of epithelium of oropharyngeal cavity and gastrointestinal tract. So if you ask a cancer specialist, which is one of the toughest carcinomas to treat, you'll be surprised more than even brain tumors. The one they say which has a very high mortality rate is the GI carcinoma, gastrointestinal, because over a period of time, the patient becomes very weak with GI carcinoma, because he's not able to his digestive system does not function, so because of which he is nutritionally deprived, electrolytically deprived in many ways, thus leading to, and treating carcinoma of the Gastric mucosa is again very challenging, thus in most cases leading to high mortality rate. So the toughest, one of the toughest carcinomas to treat would be GI carcinoma. And uh, the mechanism of this ulcer formation or the mucositis is due to rapidly dividing basal cells of the oral mucosa or among the body cells vulnerable to damage by chemotherapy and radiation therapies. So sites of mucositis, it can occur in esophagus, stomach, duodenum, jejunum, ileum, colon and the rectum, starting from the oral cavity through till the end of the oral cavity, anywhere within the gastrointestinal mucosa. And the mechanism is similar to that of oral mucositis that we saw before. Although GI mucositis is less common, treatment of ovarian and nasopharyngeal cancer also can result in vaginal and nasal mucositis. In severity scales, many validated instruments have been developed to stage and measure the mucositis severity. One among them is given by the National Cancer Institute's Common Toxicity and the World Health Organization's Oral Toxicity Scale (OTS). So the one which we frequently follow for mucositis, clinical grading of mucositis, is the WHO's Oral Toxicity Scale, in which grade 1 there is soreness and erythema, and then there is in grade 2 there is erythema and ulcers, where erythema and ulcer, but still the patient can still swallow solid food. And grade 3 and grade 4 fall under the category of severe mucositis, where in grade 3 ulcers are extensive, erythema, and patient cannot even normally swallow food, cannot hold food in mouth and swallow it. And grade 4 is very severe and irreversible, and also very challenging to treat also, both symptomatically and subjectively. This mucositis occurs to the extent that the ailmentation is not possible, that is, treatment is not possible, patient is not able to consume food. Patient complains of continuous burning sensation and pain associated ulcer formation, because these conditions can also coexist with various other conditions. Sometimes the diagnosis becomes a little tricky, because an ulcer formation can there is a long list of differential diagnosis for oral ulcer formation. Unless it gives a typical characteristics, uh, diagnosis is going to be very tricky, even with certain to a certain limit of biopsy. So relative sensitivity of various organs. So we have to remember this. I already stated that uh, cells which are more susceptible to radiation, or more responsive to radiation, are called radiosensitive, and which do not kind of respond to radiation, or you know or um, radio resistant. So the um, cells which and organs which are highly sensitive are lymphoid organs, bone marrow, testis, intestines, and mucous membrane. Intermediate, somewhat moderately sensitive, or fine vasculature, growing cartilage, growing bones, salivary gland, lungs, kidney, and liver, and which are very low sensitive or almost radio resistant, are optic lens, the mature erythrocytes, the blood cells, the muscle cells, and the neurons. Moving on to osteoradionecrosis. It most frequently occurs in mandible. Osteoradionecrosis, as the name suggests, it is the change, the necrosis that is brought about in the bone due to radiation, and it is an effect that is most commonly seen as a result of radiation therapy, and it's a metabolic and tissue homeostatic deficiency due to radiation induced cellular injury. There is ischemic necrosis of bone, and the histopathology generally shows the dominant factor is obliteration of the inferior artery, that is by cutting off blood supply to that region with due to high radiation. Although the microorganism plays a role in contamination of the osteoradionecrosis bone, osteomyelitis generally differs from osteoradionecrosis. The reason for saying this is sometimes they might both present amount of similarity. So osteoradionecrosis stands for death of bone following. It is due to hypoxic injury, devitalized bone, uh, and often patient will not even be aware of it because it is usually painless, and radiographic changes in osteoradionecrosis at very early stages might or might not be present, and it is always associated with the source. So the complications that occur with osteoradionecrosis is that due to the existing condition can acquire in superinfection from bacteria and fungus, and sharp spicules can traumatize due to osteoradionecrosis, can traumatize other soft tissues, which leads to more complications. And osteoradionecrosis can be progressive, and which might lead to a potential en bloc resection, that is part or complete mandible or maxillectomy. Treatment, because of the hypocellular bone, the one popular treatment that is given for osteoradionecrosis is the hyperbaric oxygen therapy. And histopathology of osteoradionecrosis, we have to remember the 3H: the hypocellular bone, the hypovascular tissue, and the hypoxic tissue. And there is reduced activity of osteoclasts, and the osteoblast numbers are reduced, and there is decrease in collagen production, and bone marrow suffers vascular injury, because of which there is arthritis of small caliber vessels and sclerosis of connective tissue and alteration in supply. So for irradiated patients, to prevent superinfection, antibiotics can be prescribed, constant saline rinses to remove debris and other contaminants, and hyperbaric oxygen use to treat osteoarthritis. So how does hyperbaric oxygen therapy help? It does not directly affect the necrotic bone. The target is the viable bone and the viable soft tissue, and to preserve them at the max. So the goal is to revascularize the radiated tissues and to improve the fibroblastic density. So the healing process generally requires oxygen for differentiation of fibroblasts and synthesis of collagen. These are some pictures. And then finally, the late somatic effect. We talked about these late effects, the long-term effects, which generally leads to carcinogenesis. There is susceptibility of different tissues to radiation-induced cancer. The more higher possibility of cancer due to radiation are seen in colon, stomach, lung, and bone marrow, moderately in breast and esophagus, and low chances are seen in bladder, liver, skin, bone surface, and salivary glands. And genetic effects can lead to growth and development, or exposed to high level of radiation at developmental stages can lead to impairment in growth and development, mental retardation, and cataract. So radiation biology is generally the interaction between the living tissue and the X-rays, and it's a little bit of a dry topic, but remember the sequence uh, of the radiation biology that I mentioned prior. You remember the sequence, and you segregate each section of it, that is starting with radiolysis of water, then ionization, what happens, then what is the direct effect and what is the indirect effect, what is the stochastic and non-stochastic effect, and what are the various parameters that are used to measure these effects, that is the effective dose, and the absorbed dose in a person, and finally how to protect ourselves. All this gives us the perspective of radiation biology. Please go through them in your textbook, and if there are any doubts, please feel free to ask. Thank you.